I used to be a stock boy at the Coliseum when Gretzky and Fuhrer and all those guys were playing, so got to meet them all, got autographs and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Of course, Tim and Becky are jealous because they don't know what hockey is.
We do know what hockey is, but we're not quite as well versed as you folks up there.
Where are you guys from?
We're from Utah, down in the US.
Basketball.
We know basketball. We have the Grizzly hockey team here, and I've got some friends who are rabid hockey fans, but
it's nothing like
it's not like
it's not like up there.
Yeah, you can't, you can't go to two different Tim's coffee shops without seeing an arena in between.
Yeah.
I bet that's true. So you're talking Tim Hortons, correct, Leslie?
Sports arena, yeah, a hockey arena.
But the coffee shop you're talking about was Tim Hortons, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because those are big up there as well. So
They are very big.
welcome, Shane. Good to have you with us, Jane.
Hi.
Do we get to we do get to see your face? Love it.
Patty will not be joining us. She ran out of voice today.
Okay, I think we're just waiting for Brent.
I need to go grab my water. I forgot.
Again, enjoy your dinner.
Is Christy joining us tonight, Shane? Oh, he's talking.
Okay, we'll be getting kicked off here pretty quick as soon as Blair gets back. Because it looks like we are live on YouTube. If you're out there on YouTube, welcome to tonight. We're excited to have you with us. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. We're going to get kicked off here shortly. And I'm excited about tonight's topic. It's one of my favorites.
Yay. Oh, Jackie is knocking on the door. Letting her in.
Okay, fine.
Yep, totally.
Every time I keep coming, you come here, something else happens.
Is Christy going to join us tonight, Shane?
She's on YouTube. She's traveling, so.
Okay.
Hey, Christy out in YouTube land.
Yeah. Hi, Christy.
How are you, Christy? We miss you.
Jacqueline, good to have you on with us. Are we waiting for Brent, Blair?
Nope, I just have to let him in. He just popped on the screen when you were asking.
All right.
All righty.
So there we go. We can officially start. Well, he's just warming up. There he is. There's the man himself.
Hey, Brent. How are you?
Hey, good.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well,
Thanks for your patience, guys.
No worries.
We always wait on you. Officially the Kickstarter of the Blair Dunkley experience.
That's right.
All right. Well, we're excited to have everyone here and all of you on YouTube. Hello to Christy and anyone else that's out there on YouTube. We're aware that Christy's there, so we'll say hi to Christy. Welcome everybody to tonight's episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience. This is number 347. And if you haven't joined us before, we've been doing a reboot series. We've actually been kind of going back to the core mind models that Blair created and going through them and taking a deeper dive on those. Just a quick note, if you haven't already had the opportunity, I wanted to mention that Blair does have the BDE insider notes. This is an opportunity for you to get all the historical and ongoing notes for the Blair Dunkley experience, starting with number 318, which this is 347. So there's quite a bit of content in there. Great stuff to get your feet wet with the mind models and, and have that continuing education moving forward from 347 on. That's $25 a month, $300 a year, and it's a great opportunity to get a little bit more information than what we're able to share here live on the Blair Dunkley experience with these mind models. So if you'd like those, you can go to www.blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes, and you can grab those. As I mentioned, it's just a great opportunity to take a deeper dive into what we've been talking about here live on the Blair Dunkley experience. And with that, as I mentioned, tonight is the 347th episode of the Blair Dunkley experience, where we discuss mind models. Mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable individuals to transform their lives intentionally. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of the mind models. And we are Tim and Becky Graff, your co-hosts and certified mind model method coaches. The Blair Dunkley experience is Blair's free gift to you and is an opportunity to be here to learn, experience, and practice these mind models in a safe, real-world environment. Mind models have helped Becky and I personally in every area of our lives, not only in the business that we've created, but personally resolving an 8-year issue in our marriage within just a couple of hours of learning these skills as we went through Mind Model Coach. And it also helped us with the navigation of grief and PTSD when we tragically lost both of our daughters in 2020. My models have allowed Becky and I to be more effective and increase our capacities and our speed of recovery without the traditional counseling that most people are familiar with out there. We look forward to tonight's episode. We have a lot of great stuff for you tonight. We look forward to learning and welcome you officially to the Blair Dunkley experience. If you're out there on YouTube, if you haven't joined us before, we are here every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Mountain or 9 p.m. Eastern, and we go for about 90 minutes. So we're glad you're here. Please leave a comment and like and subscribe. That way you'll get all the future episodes. You'll see us. And if you comment, we actually will go back and respond to your comments, answer any questions, those kinds of things. So please do so. And with that, welcome everyone. I want to check in. Last week, as those of you that were here, we talked about naming and labeling. And that was the mind model that we were going over last week. I wanted to check in with those of you here and see if anyone had something come up that with naming and labeling or some of the other mind models that we've discussed before. I want to check in with leftovers. And with that, Brent, do you have any leftovers? Jane, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think last week when we were on the call, I don't remember if I actually brought it up or not, but I was sharing with someone at church that I have come to know that there's a difference between, well, understanding that, we behave to the meaning of our words and labeling something as pride when the reality is what we're feeling is happiness and joy. And I do believe that those are also two separate things. And that, a lot of times when someone says, oh, I'm so proud of my child, it's not that they're really trying to boast and say, hey, look, my child's better than yours. It's more of, I am filled with so much joy with what they have accomplished or what they have done that they're just they just overflow and want to share that joy. Mm-hmm. And just by using a different label for a feeling, it brought such clarity to me, but it also brought clarity to others who had always been taught that, oh, that's just pride. And that you should be ashamed of yourself for feeling so much pride. Oh, we did talk about that because I did say something. Anyway, I actually shared it in church on Sunday, and there were some people that were just, blown away with that just because I changed the label of a feeling. And so, and I'm not saying that to boast, but to clarify that it really does make a difference when you have the correct label for
I
something.
have to jump on this because there's been lots of evidence of that. And that's how come naming and labeling is so critical. And again, you're not boasting. What you are is clarifying and sharing a result, because like the pride thing, the boasting thing is internal and subjective to pump up and produce results or senses in an environment that is not necessarily fully externally verifiable. It is internally verifiable, but happiness and being able to give out that sense of opportunity for people to express healthy expression of feelings is important. And that actually creates a release for people. And they don't have to squelch, they don't have to stuff, they just are truly happy and, aware of their child. And there is pride that is harmful, but there's also pride in the ability to execute and do a job well that is externally verifiable. And being able to do something effective is, if you're being proud of something that you're not doing, and you're boasting and making claims that are untrue, that's not helpful. But if you're stating what just is, let's say while you were in the Olympics, or training for the
Right.
Olympics, yeah, trying. And so, is it prideful to state that you were at a caliber that was trying for the Olympics?
It
Or is
can
it
be.
just a fact?
Yeah, it can be. I think it depends on the internal perspective, as you were saying. Am I
Exactly.
doing this to get recognition and to have somebody maybe have a better opinion of me, rather than just stating, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and this is where, what I've done with it since then. Not necessarily, with the actual sport, but with the skills of applying myself and to diligently seek after something and
Exactly.
to push through even when it's not comfortable. And I mean, there were a lot of things that that I gained from that, and also self-confidence, true
Absolutely.
self-confidence.
Yep.
That's something that I can't. No one can take that away from me.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
And
you know what? It tends to come into an observable behavior, because most of the time it comes across as a calm statement of fact that is over and above what an average person um, has accomplished. That just is a statement. When you've won something or won a competition, it's just a statement of fact.
But
And
so like for this weekend though, and talking about, when you talk about your children, how much does the child feel different when you express
Oh,
this love and joy that is so overflowing versus, oh, I have such pride in you,
yes.
And
It-
I'm so happy, Jane, that you brought this for leftovers, because it ties beautifully into what we're talking about today.
okay.
So if you think about when we understand that we behave to all meanings, like all the meanings of the words that we use, like you guys are talking about with pride, there is the arrogant pride, there is the puffed up pride, there is all of that, but there is the acknowledgement from the perspective of it's okay to feel good about yourself, to feel proud of your accomplishments or that of those that you care about. But when we are certain, okay, if we are like, that's what that means, and we don't engage with curiosity, we only see one side of the coin. We don't have the ability to gain true clarity, like you shared. You said that you shared on Sunday, and people's minds were like blown. So, Jane, what did you help them do? What did you do specifically? when you shared what you did?
Mhm.
Well, I think for one, I may have helped them um, also gain clarity and um, uh, and understanding of the difference. And I did explain that they're kind of related because you can bleed from one to the other without realizing. You could slide down that slippery slope. But as long as you're recognizing what's your perspective, where are you coming from?
And how do you have that recognition of that perspective?
Oh, that's internal. That's internal.
So how do
And
you?
I'm not looking for recognition from external because I said it.
Mhm.
I am just expressing what it is I'm feeling.
Sure.
And
what?
For the one mom, she was just, like she was so relieved because she'd always been taught pride is bad, pride is bad. And so she was, has been, harboring this confusion and this, like I said, shame. Whereas the reality is it's joy. And when you have love and joy that you're just so overflowing and you share, that's nothing to be ashamed of. That is just pure feeling. And so there was that aspect. Plus, so there was a clarity there, and then also an understanding.
Yeah.
There was
So
understanding on a different playing field or level or whatever you want to say, but she finally felt that she understood what I was saying, and she understood her own feelings and was able to take it in and say, okay, this works with me. This feels right. This is where, what feels true for
yeah,
her.
what I love is that you had an opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a fill in, and by doing so, you engaged. It seems like anyway that the other person was engaged through a process of curiosity and was able to then find clarity for themselves and apply it, right? And update for themselves what pride then in their child might be. So I want to shift this conversation to our topic today, which is we're going to be discussing clarity versus certainty. Okay. So Jane's been saying the word clear and clear and clear many, many times. I lost count of how many times you're saying it because it's a big deal. But we want to go a little bit deeper today because sometimes we can say the words, but we may not be capturing how and where we're actually engaging with clarity and or certainty. Like we may understand the construct, but how does it actually show up in our life? So I'd like to ask the question to Leslie. What does clarity mean to you? And then Brent, you'll be next.
It's clarity. Clarity has a larger scope of understanding.
How so?
Well, I guess it takes in more emotion, whereas certainty is definitive. Certainty has a prescribed definition. It is what it says it is. It's black and white. I'm thinking of building codes for some reason that's coming up in the back of my mind. They're prescribing certain things that have to be achieved within a certain parameter, a certain building element. And if you stray from that, you're not likely to um, be effective with construction.
Yeah.
I'm trying to generalize this too much without going into so many tangents that are available. But clarity is understanding intent. So I sense that clarity has an emotion tied to it, an understanding emotion, and um, yeah, I think that.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you, Leslie. Brent, what does clarity mean to you?
Clarity means to me something of is I wrote down a few words. It is questioning, being open, flexible, uh, seeking other perspectives, understanding, like Leslie was pointing out there. Um, it has curiosity in it, place of non-judgmental place. You're coming from those places. So I was just brainstorming there as quickly as I could. But that was it, like from the basic mind models, it incorporates like the rest of these, they flow together. There's not, separating each one. So they're all flow and tie together. And to be effective, to have clarity, to seek that which you're not understanding, or there may be something you're missing, to be aware of some and notice that there's likely something you're not knowing, or there's pieces you're missing, and it's different for others and the situation. So clearly identifying those pieces and to put things together so you can get the whole picture as much as you can to gain a larger understanding.
Yeah, well said, Brent. I love how you distilled down like how things all flow together, because
Mhm.
clarity, I would say, Blair, is a process. Access to clarity is a process. Shane, curious your thoughts.
What I wrote down was, understanding for sure is what I think of clarity, and then actually alignment with others. You're bringing each other to alignment with that, and then of course that alignment piece relates into, self, others, and situation on how all that ties together.
Awesome. Michael, are you available? Would you like to chime in on what clarity means to you?
Not at the moment, but I will in a little bit.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. How about you, Jacqueline? Maybe not. Clarity is one of those things that, for me, the word that comes to mind when I think about clarity is illumination. I feel illuminated. I feel light. I feel a release of emotion because I'm not holding this tension or this angst because it has to be a certain way. I'm not trying to shove a square peg in a round hole, right? When I get the information, okay, when I engage with, as Brent was talking about, curiosity, and as Shane mentioned, there's self, other, situation, alignment. When we engage with curiosity, okay, and start, Jane was talking about the names and labels that we use, we have a clearer picture of what's actually going on, which then allows us to have more, what's the word? We're just scared out of my head. Access, that's the word, to behaving in a way that has a higher probability of success or effectiveness in our world. So as we're talking about clarity, clarity by definition is a clearness or lucidity as to perception or understanding, freedom from indistinctness or ambiguity, kind of like a clean mirror versus a foggy one. I don't know if any of you guys have ever driven in fog, like super, super thick fog, and you can't see anything. It brings all this, at least for me, it brings all this tension. It's like, oh no, we're not gonna hit a deer, or we're gonna, corner's gonna come. There's gonna be somebody who's being silly with their lights off, and it stresses me out a little bit when I don't have clarity. Can anybody else relate? When you don't have details, if you don't have trailers like me, if there's things lacking, right, for information, sometimes it can feel stressful. And it's interesting because if we're getting stressed out and we're in that space, where are we likely operating from?
Oh, emotion?
Jacqueline. Could be emotion. Jacqueline, did you have something to add?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Oh, Let me see then.
We can see and hear you.
Hey.
Oh, sorry, this is the first time I've been able to come. I'm home now.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Home.
So clarity for me is like what Becky's saying is like access to action. Because like when I'm in a moment where I'm needing some clarification, I have to stop. Like I always stop and ask, where am I? And like when Becky was talking about driving in the fog, it's like, okay, where am I? Okay, two hands on the wheel, and it's finding clarity that way, um, on that type of level is very helpful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Jacqueline. Appreciate that. So clarity, okay, it has that effect on us. Let's talk about certainty. I know for me, you guys, I'll just straight up honest. I find that I'm driving for certainty a whole lot more than I wish that I was. And there's some specific markers for me where I have to kind of give myself a timeout and be like, okay, what are you driving for here? Literally. Okay, what is it that you're after? So what are some maybe signals or symptoms of driving for certainty that you guys have noticed in your own world? Jane?
I live out in the cornfields, okay? And when the corn is 8 feet tall, if I'm certain I'm on a certain road, that's fine. But if I'm not clear as to how far down that road is, I have no idea if I've missed my turn or not. So I've got to be paying attention and be focused on where I'm at, because it is very easy to suddenly find yourself in the wrong place when you're out there in the cornfields. And that's even on a street, when you're just driving, you can suddenly go, where am I? And you're looking on both sides and all you see is corn. So unless you can see, oh, there are the electrical lines up there. Okay, so I still haven't made it all the way past, X road. So being clear as to where I'm at is much better than being certain that I know where I'm at. I've not passed this road yet. And it leaves me open to possibilities.
Okay, awesome. How about you, Brent? Have you ever noticed any like symptoms of you driving for certainty in your life?
Yeah, I would go with you. It's a place we tend to go to because then it's more comfortable. It's easier when you know things are exactly certain, you know where they're at and how things are going to be. Like in that aspect, it just seems like it's like, all right, I know exactly we're supposed to be this way and what it's going to do. So this is how I have it set in my mind. If it goes that way, perfect. If not, then, getting flustered and agitated. I know those come up for me. A lot of times frustration. I find myself very more of a stuck in like defending like myself or position I'm at. I will do that. That's one I know. Like, oh, okay, I am I'm holding on to something here, like really digging in, not being open, but really defending instead of okay, question like, is that true? Is really what's going on happening, or is what I believe to be true, is that actually true? So that's something I notice. There's the key pieces that I notice that are the easy ones for me to pick up are those. And that happens to like driving is like, man, it's just like it goes this way. If something happens, sometimes I know I get a little bit of, frustration or anger. I'll say something. I'm like, man, all right, it's nothing I can control. It's usually external. So it's like I want things to be very specific way and they don't happen that way, then yeah, no, I'm really getting angry at it because it's, you know, I can't make it the way I want it. That's those type of things. And that happens when I knew it. I just, you know, easy to take a step back. Okay, just quite emotional. Other things are going on, but to be aware that that's not effective in the moment. A lot of times that happens when I'm working on things and you get a time crunch. Like you're like, I got to hurry up and get this done. I noticed that for me. That's a big one.
Okay, so urgency plays a role in that for you.
Yeah, like if I'm working on like a project outside physically or a vehicle, it's like, all right, I've only got so much time, but then it's like it ends up being a bigger project than you went in with thinking it would be. and you're like,
Mhm.
I've got so much time. So you put the pressure and you're like, it's not doing it what I want it to do. So
I
yeah.
can just relate to that. So like I'm certain it's only gonna take X amount of time to do Y thing, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden it's like, oh crap. No, everything else is like slid down. So I can
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thanks for sharing, Brent. But how about you, Shane? Any symptoms of driving for certainty that you've noticed that you fall into?
Well, I find it when I'm stubborn and stuck in my ways and I'm certain it needs to be done this way, I get into a little judgy, like I don't say it out loud, but I ask myself, like, why don't they see it in my point of view? Because I'm certain I'm right. And so I'm like, no, ask curious questions of how we can see things going together instead of just being my way, I guess. And it doesn't have to be my way. I've been my dad on the ranch, growing up with my dad. I mean, it was his dad did it this way, his granddad did it this way. This is the way it has to be done. Me, I bucked the system quite a bit with that. I'm like, there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat. So if I do it this way, how come the end result's the same? So I've told my son-in-laws that, I don't care how you do it, just get it done. Now, if your way takes 3 hours longer than my way is, then we might have to reconvene and, you know, gain you some clarity on how I want it done. But I'm giving you the freedom to kind of try to seek that clarity on your own. But that's where I am. I just can't. I find myself in the when I'm feeling certain, I find myself catching myself being in judgment mode.
Awesome. Great share. And that actually ties beautifully into the actual definition of certainty, which is the perception of an agreement or disagreement of our ideas, full assurance of mind, exception from doubt, and exemption from failure. So really, certainty is it's masterful at creating the illusion of control. So as has been mentioned tonight, when we're thinking about self-other situation, taking a minute, like Jacqueline said, where am I? Or what part of this is actually mine? Can help us move away from certainty and those judgment pieces or frustration that we may have. But if clarity seems to be the more effective choice, how come we keep falling into this certainty rut? What is it that certainty actually does for us? Blair, would you like to speak to this a little bit? I'm curious your perspective.
Sure. Well, certainty is largely a historical thing where we have um, this whole model. It comes from literally over 100 years ago, the Industrial Revolution still. And it takes generations of experience for things to get worked out of our socialization and culture. Now, general psychology states that certainty is an important inherent part of our nature. I personally take exceptions to that because I don't find hard evidence of that. Yet we have different social organization, like society exists, and we have like psychologists, we have doctors, we have science, and science holds on to things that we know to be certain, except that science keeps on updating itself. And the moment that it freezes a thing, like we had three states of matter for a while. Now we have four states of matter, and we're seriously looking at a fifth state of matter because of quantum computers. So we had liquid, solid, gas for a long time. And then we had liquid, solid, gas, plasma. And so, because fire is plasma, it's not a normal state of matter, but it used to be a hot gas is
What
fire,
about
but it's
ether?
not.
I know that
So,
they keep trying to say ether doesn't exist, but it does.
yeah. And so now they've got something that is unnamed fifth state of matter, which is like ether, but could could help define dark matter. So all of these things were states of scientific fact or truth that we were certain about. The only problem is that certainty model, because we are learning so quickly about the world where we are, science, and the speed of change, certainty no longer works. Yet a lot of psychology still focuses around, well, you got to find you can be certain that you are where you are. Well, you can be certain that you're loved and you're in love and all of these things. Well, no, for today you are, and you work on it daily, and it stays that way for a very long time, but it's not a certainty anymore. It's a direction, it's a path, and staying clear and connected to that path. That gives you the clarity of going forward and a comfort in knowing how things are likely going to go. But you're also adaptable so that you can adapt to change. I mean, gosh, the two of you, Becky, Tim, have had to adapt to a ton of change. And had you hung on to certainty, this is how our life is going to go, uh, that sort of blew up a few times for you.
And it's a very fluid thing. So if you think when I think of the word certainty, it's locked. It's very closed.
Yep.
It's stable. And I know for me, like there's been definitely times where I just want to be certain of something. Just give me proof, hard. It's gonna be this way. Nothing's gonna change, and I can count on it.
Yep.
But what's real? So if we talk about the difference between what's real and reality here, what's real is everything changes. Like there's not anything that's 100% static, never moving, immovable, non-changeable in life.
Exactly.
You are not the same person completely that you were yesterday when you woke up. Like, I'm certain I'm the same person. I feel the same way. Well, there's things that have changed. Spoiler alert. Okay. And so for me, I love talking about clarity versus certainty. I catch myself driving for certainty because for me, what does certainty do for me? It gives me a momentary reprieve and proof and reassurance that I'm okay. That's okay. But then I have to ask myself, is it really certainty, or am I doing a high probability that these things are in play? Is that more clarity, or is it that I'm driving for certainty? Because if I find myself getting locked into certainty, I find myself getting stuck in a big old mud bog, and pretty soon that thing's going to harden up and I'm not going to be able to move because I've
So true.
convinced myself that I'm this way, or it has to be a certain way.
Yep.
So there's an ebb and flow. So again, for me, certainty, sometimes I drive for it personally because I'm human and I want reassurance and certainty that things are the way that I want them to be. And Brandon, you kind of spoke to this, you're chuckling a little bit. Like, my plans are going to go perfect. I'm certain that I've allotted enough time that this project's going to go smoothly. There's never going to be any extra bumps in the road. I'm looking at him because that happened this week. Okay. But it doesn't allow us to be fluid and adaptable from that perspective.
I may jump like certainty, we're thinking about certain. The only thing I'm certain is that I can't be certain. Like I'm certain it's not going to go the way I want it to go. Like it's always going to be something that I'm not seeing.
So you're super clear, it sounds like,
Yeah.
on how life evolves for you.
Yeah. So I have more clarity that things are likely, there's more than I can see or expect to happen. There's something else that's going to come up that's there. So, yeah. Yep.
Jackie, you just came on camera. Did you have something to add? I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah, well, it's like you're doing failing fast. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like you're failing fast forward, falling forward in between certainty and clarity. Very interesting. And that's what I mean, like being in the moment, like, and you do get that reprieve where you're just like, then you take the next step or the action or the thought in your head that takes you elsewhere. And anyway, because like you're checking it out as well. And I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
It is.
I'm hearing the size of now. So certainty, maybe RFN for a second's effective, but how long term is that? So to your point, Jacqueline, failing fast, falling forward, acting from a place of curiosity, let's test this and let's see. And Brent, I think it was you and Shane brought up assumptions. Okay. If we're operating off of an assumption, what likely are we driving from?
Driving
Shane?
something from that's Shane.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, go
Go, go.
ahead, Brent. Shane,
I was
Shane.
saying something from the past, like as Jane was aspect, being certain for something, you're pulling from the past experience. It's like I'm certain it's going to be this way because something from the past is going to be exactly the same.
Mm. Shane had a look. That's how come I called his name up. So
Well, you know what it means when you assume, right? You make an ass out of you and me. And that I don't know how many times, even in the last week, that saying has come in my head with situations on the ranch and dealing with neighbors and etc. And I'm like, okay, let's get some clarity here. I want to have a conversation about some clarity. What actually do we need to get out of this and not just assume that everybody's on the same page? Let's get some clarity and get some alignment of where you need us to be. So no, I just still I'm still a 12-year-old boy, Becky, when you say assume.
that's okay. So would you mind filling everybody who may not be aware of, how do you clarify an assumption? What do you need to do? What mind model fits here?
Uh, what my well, I mean, solid 3 E's, but I mean, you gotta ask curious questions. I mean, you gotta get out of that assumption and ask questions. What, why, not why, geez, what, how, when, get to seeking those things. And it's funny because the boys and I have been like this morning. We were at the barn at 4:30 catching horses and had an hour drive before we unloaded, and it's funny that they're catching themselves now on why, why. And the other one of them said why a couple times, and the other one looked at him and said, "That's a judgment question, right, Shane?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. And then there's like, well, how do we say that and not a judgment? And then we're talking about tone, and you can still have the disguise why when you're. But anyway, so no, it's really just getting curious. Becky, back to the original question, just getting curious and asking those good questions.
Yeah, so a mind model that we use here is ASK, which is assumptions stop knowing.
Yeah.
So it's a place where sometimes we just behave, and really paying attention and taking a minute to slow down to be a little bit more intentional with our communication can alleviate a whole lot of stuff. And so I'm curious, in a relationship setting, whether that be with yourself or with someone else, how does certainty hinder the quality, or impact, I would say, not hinder, but impact the quality of that relationship?
I had a salesman. I have a no soliciting sign on our door, and somebody had knocked on the door, and I'm over here pointing, and he says, "We're not selling anything. We're not selling anything." It's like, okay, do I need to listen to this person? What they were doing is they were trying to book a sales call, and it had to do with solar panels, which in my mind, I was certain I don't want solar. But as they were talking about how on our electrical bill here in Illinois, we've been paying a couple of dollars every month for the last 4 or 5 years. And it goes into a fund so that people that do want solar, they no longer have to take out a loan and pay for it up front. This pays for the solar panels and the installation for you. So all you have to do is use it. And their system had to do with, rather than selling solar back to the power companies, is to install a battery. So when we had our blackout the other night, we would have still had power. And he was so certain that I was going to book this thing, that I was so emphatic that I'm not going to book this thing. And then today, as I was sitting here thinking about long-term goals and going, well, if I had solar and I was on a battery backup and the power did go down and it was for more than a day, my daughter who's on insulin would need to have a refrigerator. And do we have enough generator, gasoline to run the generator so that we would have it if it was more than, a day, if it was a week? I went, that battery solar system sounds pretty good. It's too bad that guy made me so mad because I would be calling him now.
Mm.
Because we were both certain that I didn't want to. Well, can I come back next month? No, I don't want to talk to you. I was so certain I didn't want to talk to him because he was not respecting my time because it was not a time for me to sit and talk to him. So it was like, so that whole certainty had us completely out of alignment. And now that I've had a chance to think of it, it's like, I actually like the system, but I don't like him. So how do I figure out who or what this system is? And can another company, I've gotten into the curiosity thing. Are other companies able to tap into that? And if I make a phone call, would I get another, used car salesperson here, or would it be somebody else who would be willing to listen to what it is? And would I have enough information to be able to to make a decision kind of thing? Or am I going to get sold?
I love the dynamic that you just shared because it was like certainty, hardcore, locked in, not going to happen. And then the evolution of curiosity to clarity and how this is actually an effective fit for your situation, which I love.
And did you see me calm down?
Yes.
As I started asking
in real
myself
time.
questions, I completely came off that mountain and started, thinking about it and, getting curious and all that stuff. So,
Well, and I think it's interesting the way you shared that, and I wanted to just echo what Becky said. I love how it went from certainty, how that kind of, after you came down off that place of certainty, it opened the door for all this curious questions that you've been asking and exploring, and it has brought you back around. It reminds me of, this is a lot of the same situation that Becky and I found ourselves in. We were, a young family, had our two young girls. We were, certain that the girls were going to go to school, dad was going to go to work, and we get this idea that, we're going to watch our girls grow old, get married, all those things that life should be, right?
The
And
natural progression
the
of
natural
things.
progression of things. And that was kind of that curveball that Becky and I found ourselves in, is all of a sudden that certainty, that idea of what life was going to be, suddenly in a blink of an eye was gone and it shifted. And the evolution of curiosity that has come from that for us, starting asking ourselves questions and exploring different things. And we've leaned into, as Blair mentioned earlier, we've leaned into change. Change is part of life, and leaning into clarity instead of the certainty all the time, asking questions. And one of, Patty's brought this up on the Blair Dunkley experience before. One of the questions that I ask myself anytime I find myself in a place of certainty, I immediately follow it up with, how do I know? And that in itself, if you're not careful, could, lead to certainty. But what the idea behind that question is, how do you know, is looking for the external evidence, the things outside of myself that can clarify whatever, situation I'm in. If I'm finding myself, I'm scared. Well, what am I scared of? How do I, what's going on? I just start getting curious and start asking myself those kinds of questions that then, can open the door for that curiosity, kind of like what you were doing there, Jane. Just you start asking questions that just opens one door and opens another. And so I just, that's what was coming up for me. I appreciate you sharing that, Jane.
And Brent, you were doing this and then you were looking up. What was coming up for you during this conversation?
Oh, I can remember. There was an example that I was thinking of, the just like the confrontation piece, butting heads and, holding steadfast to your side, and the like the judgment and even animosity that creates between two people. So, especially if you're close, or, sometimes families, it can drive a wall between people. Resentment, it can build up and build up, and just, if you're really stuck in your ways, or your thinking and in your side, it's, you're right and, they're wrong. It really can drive a wedge between people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh man, that really, sounds, but it was funny, Jane's story. And then it's like, well, just the whole thing from certainty to clarity and how it works. It was a great example and seeing how that flows. And, just getting to the point of asking questions and saying, is that really true? Like Tim was saying, is that like, how do I know that's true?
Yeah.
So,
I actually had a conversation with my mom at a wedding over the weekend about this exact thing. She was very certain about a lot of things in her world, and she amped up her emotions, and she was emoting all over the place.
Yep.
And she had a narrative in her head that was not accurate, not fair, and not serving herself or anyone else. And so I asked her the question, you know, is that something that you like, do you have concrete external evidence of that thing? And she kind of like paused for a second. She's like, well, no, I just assumed. I said, and is that fair? Is that fair to make an assumption and not get other details to find out if that's true or not, versus just leveling the full cannon, literally, of emotions at this one thing, And so it's really a really key thing for us to kind of check in and see how we're operating, because this is another piece where we have relationships. So the salesman come to the door, interfamily conversations, but what about the ones with ourselves? How is our certainty, or how has our certainty in the past impacted our relationship with ourselves, professionally, personally? Anybody have something that they care to share?
I do.
Tim does.
If I can. No, when I think about this, certainty leading to self-sabotage, I think I remember a point in time in my life where I was in the routine of getting up, going to work, doing the same old routine at work, coming home, being tired, eating dinner, going to bed, repeat Monday through Friday over and over and over again. And not really getting curious about other avenues of what I might be able to do, how I can truly help others, how I can impact others. And I remember when Becky and I were first introduced to entrepreneurship, and I was very skeptical. I had made these assumptions that what we were looking at the time to step into the entrepreneurial world was a scam. And I dug my feet into the ground, and I wasn't moving forward. I was very comfortable in my routine, in my job, and what I was doing. And the interesting thing with that is when I finally just got curious, and started asking questions and looking into the opportunity that was in front of us, it opened a whole new world for me. And that is actually through that process is where we met Blair, which opened doors for the mind models and becoming more effective, not only with the way we think, but the way we behave. And it changed my entire life. Once I finally, got outside of the certainty of my routine and started asking, well, what else is out there? What are other options? And now, I do my best, hence the question I asked earlier, and those kinds of things. How do I know? I do my best to stay curious, to stay open to new possibilities, to new things. And it has led us down some really cool paths. And not only that, we've met some amazing people out there in the world through that process as well, much like all of you that are here tonight. So
I was going to say that he stole it. So you guys, has anybody else ever experienced a level of, we can put the name and label self-sabotage on it, like some perspective that you've held super close that has kept you from something that you want in life? Internal narrative, negative self-talk, internal self-talk. It can show up in a lot of different ways. Michael, did you have something you would like to add in here? You came on camera, so we're just checking in with you.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think about that question right now. I mean, as far as like the whole clarity versus certainty aspect of things, I've been certain my entire life that I'm allergic to penicillin because my mom tells me I'm allergic to penicillin. Every time I go to the doctor, they ask, "Are you?" And then I tell the story that I was given. I have no conscious memory of it. My throat closing up when I was a kid. But I just had a penicillin test done now. I'm in the hospital because I got fluid in my lung and I'm getting it drained. and I'm going to find out in probably about 5 minutes. So we'll get clarity in about 5 minutes if I actually am allergic to penicillin or not.
I would love if you would,
Interesting.
if you don't mind, we'd love to hear, because that's not an uncommon thing where we've been told something, it's been indoctrinated, we've heard it ever since whenever, that this is how it is, right? So that's, we're just operating on good faith, if you will, but we haven't necessarily needed to or decided to test something for ourselves. So again, Jane, great masterful like illustration of what that looks like. And Michael, you're like RFN, like right now in the process of identifying whether or not you're coming from a place of clarity or certainty. Leslie, anything pop up for you as it relates to how certainty maybe has impacted your relationship with yourself?
I think it's a result of learning and being certain about construction processes that have given me confidence and success in the construction industry over time. Being able to go into every construction project is different. You call it a 5-story office building, and there's one on this block, and a year later there's another one on the next block. They might look similar. You know, they might fall into that category of 5-story office building, but they'll be totally different projects.
Mhm.
Totally different. And so it's a matter of when you're in the design stages and working through trying to pull together all the intents of all the different trades that because building is never one person, it's never one contractor, it's definitely a team effort that are all working for their own team, and everybody's trying to cover their own. I should say this better than that. Everybody is trying to work within their responsibility and limit their liabilities to maximize profit and hurry up, get it done, and get on to the next one to do it all over again. So a lot of times you have people that are not interested in sitting through a design process to completely come up with solutions, being curious about the project to identify where obstacles can happen, and making it clear, clarifying everything. But you're also certain at the same time, you're also certain that the process of doing what you have to do and recognizing the certainty of what others have to do in their processes are all joined together.
Is that really certainty though, or is it simply clarity of roles and responsibilities?
No, there's a lot of certainty because you know there are certain aspects that are not going to work. And there are certain things that I may require to do my job for us to do our work that first needs to be performed by somebody else who it's their responsibility to do it. Because if I were to do that part, it adds liability to me. And if it's, so it's a combination of both. In the end, you're looking for clarity, or in the process, you're working for clarity, but it's based on certainty of process. You can't put up a cladding system if there's no steel there to take it.
Fair. So this is one. Yeah, and this and I get where you're going with it. This one for me sometimes, and Blair, I'd love your thoughts on this. I find myself smushing between clarity and certainty often because of the distinction between what things are. Like for me, I'm very clear. You could name and label it certainty, but I'm not ever certain about anything until until after I can evaluate what was done. So I'd love your feedback here, Blair.
Yeah, I go, this could be a naming and labeling issue.
Mhm.
Is it certainty or is it content versus process? And clarity versus certainty. Are we in a clarifying process with identifying the content of something that needs to be there inside of a process to clearly define objectives? Now, the clarity in defining the objective, once it's agreed upon and a clearly defined objective, could be stated as a blueprint. Like, this is what things need to look like at the end. It's a clearly defined objective. This is what we need to do. And there is process models that are brought into that, a flow, a pattern, a connection of dots, as it were. But each time we move through the clarity of building a process that gives us a specific desired result. Being a contractor, a small one, but a contractor when I put myself through university, I found clarifying the objective as an integral part of the construction process. And once that was clarified, then what we had were a set of processes that gave a prescribed outcome. Now, was that outcome absolutely certain? No, because the building inspector had to come and make sure that we kept to everything that was supposedly prescribed. And so that held it to a standard. And so is that standard certain? Not until it's been inspected. And even then, if somebody bribes an inspector, heaven forbid, yada, 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 never happens, except I'm in a building that doesn't have grounded wires in it. So and that's supposed to be part of a building code. So, I mean, hello, how did that happen when everything got passed? So, you know, anyway, yeah, you've got your hand over your mouth, Leslie, laughing away there, chuckling away, because these are all things. And this is where clarity and certainty are needed, but we've got clarity and we've got process and content. So I think you were talking about smushing a little bit there. So we can smush clarity and certainty, but we can also smush clarity and certainty with process and content. And so we have to tease apart the
That's a big
process and
old
content.
push.
Yeah, and it's a four-way smush, yes.
Oh, thank you for that, Blair. That was super helpful for me because sometimes I find myself like, I guess there's a level of self-doubt there. Like, am I driving for something? Am I trying to prove or position something? But being able to tease out the parts is helpful. So I appreciate that as well.
Well, all I do is I hold myself curious and then drop all the assumption of trying to fit something into a mold and just ask myself, well, what is Leslie talking about? And it doesn't matter if he's saying clarity or certainty. I don't care. He can call it whatever he wants. I'm not attached to that. What would I describe this as? And I go, oh, he's describing the content of a building at the end of the day. So is that accurate? It seems to be. And he's got content and process. Both are needed all the time. You don't deshmush content and process, by the way, because you can sort of deshmush them, but they are always two sides of the same coin. So you can't disconnect them. Whereas you can with clarity and certainty. And you can with things like um, judgment and evaluation. You can separate those as clearly defined differences, whereas content and process, although it's got a very clear line to it. It's like the it's like if you're seeing grass on the ground. Well, you see the grass, that could be called the content, but the part that makes the grass grow is the roots. So all the roots that are down below there, that's the process that enables the content to happen. So, and if you don't have both, you don't have a plant. So, all of a sudden you need both. So you can't separate one from the other without it not existing. So again, just trying to tease apart mind models that if you can do it, then and it's not that tough, but when you do it, you get clarity and your flexibility because somebody can speak up and say, well, what about this? And you go, well, I guess I was not clear enough. And that is certainty. So there you go. There's the evidence because these things don't work 100% of the time, but they do work the vast majority of the time. And I want to play the odds in life. And I want to bet on things that are 80, 90, 99% of the time they work. That's what I want to do.
Love that. And so I just want to end with this because I think we're about time for wrap up. One of the quotes that Blair says often, and it's about clarity versus certainty, is certainty is not a questioning process. It's a telling process. So just kind of hold that in your mind. Anytime you find yourself telling yourself or anyone else, you might be, high probability, driving for certainty versus clarity, which is a questioning process, as Blair's just talked about, like teasing out the parts of what it looks like. And I just popped that in the chat. So is there anybody that has anything else they'd like to add right now? And if not, then I think we'll transition into wrap up.
I was just going to say, I put it in the comments earlier when you'd asked the question of whether you had a belief and it limited you because you were so certain in that belief. The comment I made is it used to be believed by everyone that a human being could not run faster a 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
Well, once the first person did it, people were doing it. We're going after. Oh, I can do that. I bet I can do that. But until they got beyond that belief, it hadn't been done, and no one was going to do it. It just wasn't possible. So, that's.
It was stated as scientific fact.
Oh, it must have been certain then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those other ones. I wrote a whole little booklet about that years ago about Roger Bannister and breaking the 4-minute mile and how that was done and like all the research I did and how many people were stating that it was impossible. And yeah, it was just that's not possible. So anyway.
Awesome.
So that just speaks to the importance of staying curious. That's really what clarity is all about, is asking questions and staying curious. Jane, do you mind starting off the wrap up tonight? Your biggest takeaway and your experience from 1 to 10?
Well, for me, having clarification on the definitions was wonderful. And then I enjoyed the discussion very much. I'm going to give it a 9 tonight. I learned something, and I always love learning something. It shows that there's always something more to learn, even when I'm certain I've already learned all this stuff.
Well, we appreciate your input tonight and the stories that you shared. That brought a lot to this evening's conversation. So thank you, Jane. Leslie, your wrap up, sir.
Thank you. Definitely 9.5 tonight. Blair's follow-up description of what I was trying to describe between certainty and clarity. I wish I had known that earlier on in my career, because he's his summed it up so much better than I have or could. But something that I have extensive experience in. But it was great to hear the terms. Now, as for building inspectors, what made me laugh is that I'll just say it. I'll just come out and say it. I've proven building inspectors wrong on more than one occasion and still got the occupancy permit.
Good.
End of story. Because it'd take too long to tell.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, Leslie, for your stories tonight as well. It also brought a lot to this evening's conversation, so greatly appreciated. Michael, would you like to wrap up? I'll come back to you.
Yeah,
I'll
he's
come back
on the
to you in a
phone.
minute. I'll come back to you in a minute. Oh,
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's about 9 out of 10. And I am now 90% certain that I am not allergic to penicillin, but I will get clarity uh, closer to going home when they actually give me penicillin.
Cool.
Thank you for the update.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for
get
tonight.
well soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please do. Jacqueline, just wanted to check in. I saw your message in the chat, but I just wanted to check in and see if you were wanted to do a wrap up, or if not, that's just fine. It's great to have you here. We appreciate you being here as always, Jacqueline. And Shane.
Oh yeah, great episode. 9 out of 10 for me. The asks, assumption stop knowing was great to go over again real quick, and then I catch myself doing a lot. I have to agree with Becky on the smush, and I smush a lot of things a lot of times, and remembering that and trying to stay out of that before I get too far smushed is very beneficial. And then the actual Blair's quote that Becky put in there too about, clarity is more questioning and certainty is more telling. Is more telling is very beneficial knowledge as well. So I'll completely concur that if a guy would just take an hour a week to learn Blair's mind models, vastly improve your life.
For sure. Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Shane. Appreciate it. And please, Christy, I know you're out there on YouTube. Please give Christy a hug for us. We appreciate her and travel safe, Christy. So, moving on to Brent.
Yeah, I say like this clarity versus certainty was one you were asking about, like our experiences with certainty and where we have where this would be was, I was thinking, I'm like, and this was tied to yet our last week's, the from the beginning is like the self-sabotage and the self-fulfilling prophecy, like Tim was mentioning. I was like, that fits, ties together. So then it's like, well, you can see how through that the mind models are, they flow together. So we're separating them out, looking at it, but then also another example of how they're like very closely related and they flow together. How you use them. So they intertwine with one another, and that's very very helpful because that came up with me like a couple of days ago. I was like, well, I said something to myself. I was like, well, is that true? And I'm like, well, if I'm saying that all the time, and I'm telling myself that I'm going to have a self-fulfilling prophecy because I'm going to behave towards that. So I was just like, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, all right. So definitely helpful. I'm like, oh, that came up quickly, recognize. I'm like, that's that one thing, habit that every now and then pops back up but I'm able to quickly recognize it and switch. So yeah, I give today a 9 for me. Digging a little deeper into the clarity and the certainty and seeing those two, and as well with Leslie, how the example how you can easily they can become smushed sometimes too. So as an example, you're seeing those like Becky, you were, but as kind of give the with the process and content as well. That's a little bit more like seeing those and you're like, okay, like how that can become all one together, and you can get, is that certainty, or is it just like you're clear on the process and it's high probability, like this is, I'm very clear on what's going, so it's a state that your mind is in. Are you in a state of certainty, or you state of clarity? So that whole process of where you're at. So it may not be, like I was like, well, I'm certain that I'm not certain, was I'm very clear that I'm, that things aren't, going to go exactly how I want them. So I'm not in the state of certainty. I'm in a state of clarity. Yeah. It's the difference of where I'm at. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That was for
Well,
me.
awesome. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. It's awesome awareness.
Yes, Shane.
Yeah, Shane.
Christie's wrap up for the night.
Oh.
9 for the night. Clarity gives me the ability to see my options clearly and knowing what actions to take right now. And certainty might feel safe, but it stops me from acting unless I know everything. That's the short version. If it makes sense, you can share for me. Oh, I missed them all too. Yeah. I didn't proofread. I just started reading, but we all love you too,
It was
Christy.
great. Hey,
Awesome.
Christy. Yes, you too.
Yep. Appreciate you chiming in your wrap up, Christy. Thank you. And Becky.
9.3 for me tonight. We talk about clarity versus certainty, and there's been many points where I've been hyper aware of my process and like actively like trying to fine tune something to get traction, especially after, the accident where we lost our daughters. And I will never forget, I'm using a distorter word, but high probability I will never forget. I have large amount of clarity because it's seared into my brain, where I was certain that when I hit my trigger point, my threshold, that I would need to throw up. Okay, that was something that I had historical evidence on. Anytime I hit max capacity, physiologically, that was what was going to happen. And so I start chanting in my head, oh my gosh, I'm going to throw up, I'm going to throw up. And this one right here, he's like, but do you really? And at first I had that flare of like, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to go.
My whole question of how do you know? It
Okay.
just popped in there and I
Okay.
spit
But
it out.
and he didn't say it snarky. I'm having a little bit of fun now, but honestly, it was kind of like a cold water, which is a trigger for me, thrown over my head like that moment. Like, do I have to? Well, my body's telling me I have to, but it was a really cool way of like really being careful in the ebb and flow between what narrative you're allowing yourself to tell yourself and how it can very easily lock you into a place of certainty versus, like Brent's talking about, that ebb and flow, almost like the duck paddle, right? This balance between information and asking questions to clarify so that you have clear info instead of certainty of an outcome. Because if I had latched on to my initial reaction to what he said, oh, now we're going to go the rounds. Like, how dare you, right? There's the narrative. How dare you tell me that I don't need to do this and all the things, and yet I need a full-on why state, okay? Which is typically historical evidence where we're living in the past and we're living the story versus being present in the moment with what is right now to be able to choose how to engage. So I love clarity versus certainty, and it's a evolutionary, day-to-day, moment by moment intentionality and bringing myself back to the present when I find myself over here or over there or down there not being effective. So that's me.
Thank you. So for me, I just to do my wrap up, I really enjoy clarity versus certainty. This has been one that, I shared my story earlier, found myself really moving towards certainty a lot more than I'd like to admit, previously in my life. And when I was introduced, when I finally got curious, let my guard down, and was introduced to Blair and the mind models and learned about clarity versus certainty, it's been, as I mentioned, a really intentional thing for me to stay in a place of curiosity, asking a question, and that's kind of where the whole "how do you know" was born. Is when I find myself in those places where I want that comfort or that perceived control and safety of certainty, and that's what it is that perceived sense of controlled and safety in certainty. It's really getting curious and start asking myself questions like, how do I know? And really looking for that external, that those things outside of myself, to then, so I stay curious, asking the questions, much like what Jane was sharing earlier with her questioning process with the solar. I just loved it. I was chuckling inside when you were sharing that, Jane. Because I've been there so many times in my life where this curious question then leads to this, and well, what about this? And what about that? Well, oh shoot, now I've, put myself with this gentleman in this relationship, now I am I going to go to him and ask the questions? And it's just funny how many times I found myself in a very similar situation. And so, um, just staying curious and staying open has become very intentional and a mission of mine. And I've found that it has really opened some doors for me in my life. And I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities that I've actually found in front of me as I've stayed curious, as I've been meeting new people, new situations, and all that. So, clarity versus certainty is a big door opener if we allow it. So, this is a 9-5 for me, and I appreciate all of everybody sharing tonight and your stories and experiences with clarity versus certainty. So, and with that, Blair, your wrap up, sir.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a 9 for me tonight. Excellent discussion. Well done, Becky, on leading the charge as it were, and Tim for your opening and closing and wrap up and everything else in between. Thank you so much. Missing Patty, but you guys did an amazing job in spite of that. Now, back to clarity versus certainty, and thank you, Leslie, for your story that I was able to have a real world example to demonstrate how people smush concepts and the idea of content versus process was the primary piece that was driving it, with some clarity and certainty mixed in, without a doubt. But if you put the whole thing together and mix it all up, it's really way more clarity versus certainty, or sorry, it's way more content versus process than clarity versus certainty in that example. And it gave me a perfect example that I did not think of and would not have brought up without your example. So thank you. It's super appreciated. And it helps people be able to identify how to move themselves through some of the mind models. So, and that's what you brought up in your wrap up as well. So thank you. It's appreciated. So yeah, nine for me tonight. Just sharing with you guys. I've been getting on lots of podcasts lately, 3 so far this week, and doing my own podcast, the Mind Model Mastery Secrets. We're building up we've got 10 of them in the bank here, and that will be happening sometime soon. When that gets launched, I'll let you guys know. So it's going to be all about mind models and just Mind Model Mastery Secrets. So, okay. With that, thank you so much, everybody. Back to you, Becky and Tim.
All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for the last 90 minutes. I would say that this is probably the most effective 90 minutes that I invest in myself every week.
Yep.
So if you're out there on YouTube, I'd encourage you to continue to tune in. Make sure that you set your notifications, you subscribe so that you can get access to these trainings. And if you'd like to actually join us live, you can go to blairdunkley.com and you can have an access to be able to join us here. We'd love to have you on live with us, hear from you, what you've got going on in your world, so that you can in real time ask questions and get actual practical practice with the mind models as it relates, as Leslie was so generous with us tonight, and share stories of how you can utilize them in real time. And as Tim mentioned on the beginning of our call, Blair has put together the Blair Dunkley Insider Notes. And again, this goes from episode 318 and forward. So it's a great opportunity for you to get additional insights, to be able to go deeper, kind of maybe take some time away and digest a little bit more on how these mind models work and what they mean, and then bring that awareness to these calls to go deeper. So if you haven't had an opportunity to do so, we highly recommend that you get your hands on his insider notes. Again, you can go to blairdunkley.com /BDE-insider notes. It's $25 a month or $300 a year. And it's a great way for you to invest in yourself and skills that can radically change your life if you let them. With that, we look forward to seeing you every single Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Blair Dunkley Experience. And stay tuned, as Blair mentioned, he's doing podcasts. Mind Model Mastery Secrets is going to be a great addition into your listening repertoire, so make sure that you stay tuned for that when he gets it launched, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.